There's one single truth that is so deep in my soul, and I know it because I've seen it in so many different people, is that you have this potential. You have this deep, deep potential inside of you that you don't even know exists. Welcome to Seek the Edge podcast with me, Kelsey Lensman. And it feels so good. This has been such a long time coming. And if you guys all have been a part of my journey, some of you might have been since the OG days back when it was called KML Movement Podcast. Some of you, this might be the first time you're ever listening to me or knowing who I am. And for those that have followed it for a little bit, I had a podcast a couple years ago called the KML Movement Podcast. Everybody used to say KLM because that's the alphabet, but it was KML for Kelsey Marie Lensman Movement Podcast. And that was the first name of my company right out of undergrad. And the reason why I was excited to start podcast back then, which I'll tell you why it was no longer a thing, is because podcasting was a big part of my fitness journey. When I started to make changes physically, and I wanted to see different changes, not only just in the mirror, but within myself. I wanted to mentally feel that fire again. I wanted to physically see just that athlete again that I didn't feel like anymore. And I always say that you can train, right? You train in a gym, you can fuel your body pretty well, but it also comes down to what you're putting in your ear. And I tell our crew all the time, you're a whole human, right? It's not just about what you eat or how you train. It's also about what you put in your ears and the mindset that goes on within yourself. And after coaching many people for years, what I oftentimes see, I'm already tangenting on this, but what I oftentimes see is it's not that the game plan potentially is wrong. We can have the perfect nutrition, perfect training, but if their mindset isn't growing with them, that's where I see 10 times out of 10 normally is people start to slowly go back to where they came from. And so podcasts were big for me because when I was on the Stairmaster way back in the day in college, or I was training, I was able to get in the room, quote unquote. Was I physically in the room? No, right? They might have lived in California and I'm in Ohio. They might have lived in Florida, right? But I was quote unquote in the room with them. I was listening to their conversation. I was putting myself kind of in the virtual room with them. And people were talking about, things that were 10 steps ahead of me. They were already to their fitness goals. They may have overcome a lot of different challenges that I had yet to overcome. And I was able to learn from them. And through that entire initial part of my fitness journey, when getting introduced to podcasting and YouTube videos, it allowed me to dream bigger. And it also allowed me to realize that I wasn't crazy. Because like many of you that might have started a fitness journey or have been on that trajectory, it can feel kind of lonely sometimes. I had great friends. I have an amazing family, but it still felt a little bit isolating. It still felt a little bit alone because I was changing. I was doing different things, and what other people knew me as, I wasn't doing anymore, right? And so podcasting allowed me to realize oh, wait, I'm not the only one out here that has these different type of goals or bigger goals or fitness goals. I'm not the only type of person that is kind of thinking these thoughts. I'm not crazy. You're here. I'm going to say this all the time. You're called to step into that version of you. But it allowed me to just step into that full potential and just get in the room with other people. And so as I was going throughout then, I started my company out of undergrad, and then I started that podcast about a year later because of that reason, right? But anybody knows you do not know yourself when you were 22 years old. You do not, I knew a little bit, but you don't know a lot, right? There's different adversities, bigger challenges, and I'm not claiming that I'm on some mountaintop right now. But I've learned a lot since that time frame. And when I had that podcast, I was still trying to figure that stuff out. I was trying to figure out who I was. I was trying to figure out what I stand for and what I needed to do in the process of it all. And now being a little bit on the backside of that, I realize now that there's been so much growth, not just physical growth, meaning in a physical body, but I've had to take a hard look in the mirror many times and be all right, Kels, what do you stand for? What do you want to bring to the world? In my opinion, what message has God placed on your heart? And you're going to listen to this. I'm big in my faith. I think it's the biggest pillar for me. And for me, this is where this podcast, the phrase, the ethos, the underlying message of Seek the Edge is born. Not only just in my training, not only just leading events for women of all ages, not only just seeking my edge in business, in my personal life, but I truly believe that I'm placed here on earth to show you and to tell you that you are capable of so much more, that you have so much more inside of you than you could ever imagine. And that might sound like a vague message. Oh, but we're going to dig deep in. We're going to dig so deep in. Because if there's one thing that I know true deep to my core about every single person listening, whether you are in a car, on your way to soccer practice for your kids, whether you are listening to this at the gym, whether you are listening to this walking your pup. I just walked my dog, Captain. I just was listening to a podcast. Regardless of who you are, what your background is, where you came from, there is one single truth that is so deep in my soul, and I know it because I've seen it in so many different people, is that you have this potential. You have this deep, deep potential inside of you that you don't even know exists. You have no clue that you have this capability inside. It's almost like it's like locked up in a box that's like deep, deep down. And you're like, oh, I don't even know what's down there. So let me just not look down there, right? It's like a scary hallway. Oh, I don't even know what exists over there, right? There's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of uncertainty. So like, I'm just going to step away from that, right? But I know that there is more capability. There is more potential, and that you have more within you there. And now you might push back on me and say, but Kels, right? Some reason why you can't, some reason why you don't yet, some reason why you have not yet tapped into that. And I know for a fact because this was me. Oh my gosh, this was me. I had no clue, and I'm going to share a quick little story about myself too to maybe hit home with some of you, that I didn't even know when I was starting my fitness journey, half of the things that I'm doing today was possible, right? That's one of the biggest things. People see me training for my 100-mile race. They see me doing Mission 48. They've seen me do a lot of different fitness things, and they think like, oh, that's just how she's always been, right? Well, that's just how Kelsey's always been. And I want to give them a glimpse to me 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, when all the stuff that I'm doing today seemed impossible. All the stuff, whether it be start a business, whether it be deadlift 300 plus pounds, like I was that girl in the weight room that was going off to the side, not wanting to lift a barbell because I was afraid of what other people would think about me. I was that girl that saw other people stand up in the front of the room, like, and just own the room, right? And you just know that they got it. And I'm like, man, like, how do they do that? I guess like they were just born with something that I wasn't. And it doesn't mean that I was this like meek little girl, right? I was still the athlete, like I was still viewed a certain way, but what I felt internally was sometimes different. And that was a big thing for me to also pull into seeking the edge and really showing you guys not only just where I'm at now, but also where I came from to show you like, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I remember starting that fitness journey, and I was always thinking like, there's no way I could get there. Like this version of me and the body that I am and the things that I do, like there's no way that I could get there. That was a thought. Or also number two, well, maybe it's just meant for Susie over there and not me. Me? Step on a stage, or me have defined arms. No. That's just for her and not me. I had all these limiting beliefs, all these doubts, all these fears, all these hesitations come up just because I didn't have that belief in myself, right? I stayed in my little comfort zone because I thought, well, if it was uncomfortable, that means it wasn't meant for me. Ooh, if that's uncomfortable, well, I guess just that's not meant for me. Let me just avoid that and go into it, right? And so this quick story, y'all know it's probably going to be a long story because I love telling my stories, is I want to pull us back to when I was starting my fitness journey in college, right? And you might hear about this before, but I think this is really important. And I remember I was beginning my fitness journey, and I was just getting back into the weight room because I remember waking up one morning and I looked in the mirror and I'm like, man, like I don't even recognize me. Not just physically did I not recognize me, but I didn't feel like the Kelsey that I knew myself to be. I didn't feel like the athlete. I didn't feel just like that deep internal just fire inside. And that scared me. And so I got back in the weight room and I'm like, you know what? I don't know where to start. I got to get me good, whatever that meant. So I'm just going to go back to the gym. That's got to be healthy for me, right? And so I started just showing up to the gym. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I just kept showing up. I would train with some buddies that I knew. They would give me workouts. And I would be the girl scrolling on Instagram being like, oh, like what does this girl say to do? Oh, okay, let me do that. It was very ineffective, very not strategic. Now I look back thinking, like, man, I wasted a lot of time, but I kept showing up, right? And so about 5 to 6 months go by, And this person came up to me in the weight room, and I will never forget this. I can't remember who it was, but I'll never forget this. They came up and they tapped me on my shoulder, and they saw me training, like they saw me, showing up day in and day out. They're like, hey, are you training for a competition? And I was like, competition? Like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know what they were talking about. They're like, a bodybuilding show. Like, are you training for that? And I literally laughed in their face. I was like, you have to have the wrong girl. Like, first of all, I could not physically see myself. Like, I wasn't even close to where I needed to be for that, what I thought, right? It was just like, it was like a whole nother world away. So that was number one. Like, I didn't physically see myself even capable of that. But then also number two, I didn't think that was me, right? I wasn't the type of girl, and I'm still not, to go strut my stuff on stage. I wasn't the type of girl, and I'm still not, to be in this tiny little bikini, like doing that stuff. I wasn't that type of girl, right? And so I shut it down. One, honestly, if I'm being very honest with myself, just because I didn't believe that I was capable of it. But I remember when I shut that down that moment, I'm like, well, like what if you could? Like it was just this little glimpse, this little nudge of, well, Kels, like, what if you could? You might not be able to see yourself do it right now, but what if you could eventually, right? Just put it out there. What if? And so a few months go by, and once again, I just keep showing up and keep training in, and I denied it, right? I denied ever wanting to pursue it. I denied ever wanting to, step into that arena. But if you would see my phone, I would be looking it up. I'd be very curious about it. And so finally, I got a few months past that down the road, and I was like, okay. I was like, Kels, you can either continue doing what you're doing, right? And continue just training, but not really training for an event. Or you can put something so wildly uncomfortable on your calendar. You can actually pursue the thing that you know that you want to pursue. Honestly, you're just too afraid to pursue it because it's so uncomfortable for you. It's so far out of your comfort zone that you can't even entertain the thought of you doing it, right? And I was not going to pull this into this podcast, but y'all know we're going to get deep here, is I have this theory called the rocking chair theory. And I picture myself when I'm 95 years old. I have the visual in my brain. I'm in a rocking chair. I'm in front of the fire. I have like my little blanket, and I'm just rocking back and forth. And I picture that version of Kelsey. And I think back to kind of living my life, and I'm there. And my biggest fear in life, and if I'm honest, this really drives me sometimes. But my biggest fear is I get to that version of me and I think, what if? What if you would have taken that leap? What if you would have stepped out of your comfort zone? What if you would have pursued, competing for an event? What if you would have started that business? My biggest fear is I get to that version because I cannot change it. When I'm 95, there are no changes at 95. I hope I'm still doing pull-ups then, but I might not. However, I can't change the past, right? And there's some research, and I don't know this off the top of my brain, but there's a lot of research that when you get to those age, or people that are kind of on their deathbed, their biggest regrets are the things that they were too afraid to pursue. They let fear, they let doubt, they let hesitation get in their way. And so I think about that version of Kelsey, and I'm like, all right, you do not want to be that version and think, what if? You do not want to be that version and think, man, girl, like you could have done it. You might have been able to do it, but you were too afraid to. And on the flip end, my greatest success in life is I get to that version of me and I think, dang, like you did it. Not only did you not let doubt, fear, and hesitation get in the way, you truly lived the life that you didn't even think that you could live. You loved hard. You impacted hard. You gave hard. You pursued all that you truly could pursue. And does that mean that I make the mark 10 times out of 10? No. I probably miss the mark a lot, but I go with the intention of, you know what? I'm going to pursue all that I'm capable of here. In my fitness, in my personal, in business, and max that out. And so as I pull us back to the story, I was thinking in college, I was thinking about that. And I used that frame of like, okay, Kels, that version of you, would you think, what if? Is this something in your life that you would think, well, what if you could compete at that stage? What if you could sign up for that event? And I thought, you know what? I would regret it. And so I remember I hired a coach. I didn't tell like anybody for a few months because I was so afraid. And not even just afraid. It just felt so far from where I was then that I thought people would just laugh at me. Like, you're training for a bodybuilding show? Like, get out of here. Like, there's no way. And so I changed, I had to change a lot. I hired a coach, and I could not look back from there. And I endured the process, and that process came from a lot of discomfort. I had to say no to things that before the people pleaser in me would have said yes to. I had to prioritize training over going out on the weekends, right? And I tell everybody that pursuit of, for me, that bodybuilding, it had nothing to do with the body. And I don't bring up bodybuilding just to convince you to do it, because I don't think it's meant for everybody. It had nothing to do with the body. It had nothing to do with me getting a six-pack. It had nothing to do with me stepping on a stage, but it had everything to do with me breaking a belief of what I was capable of. That event was so far outside of my comfort zone, not just from the process of training hard and being disciplined in nutrition. It was so far out of my comfort zone by walking on stage with heels. Like, no way. Like, it was so far out of my comfort zone in so many ways. And I say this to say, like, be smart, right? Not everything to pursue discomfort is good, meaning be smart in your values and make sure it still aligns with your values and all that. Just don't be dumb. That needs to be a phrase, like, just don't be dumb. So stay aligned with your values, stay aligned with where you're at. However, all of those aspects were so far out of my comfort zone in a positive way, in a way that really challenged me to grow in a lot of different areas, that it showed me what I was capable of. It showed me, and it broke a belief of, like, you never thought that you could get to that place. You never thought that you could do those things. And Kelsey, you freaking did it. Like you did it. And actually you did pretty dang well during that process of it. And so that was what that event did for me, is it challenged me to persist through a process, to endure a process that was incredibly uncomfortable. The amount of times, guys, I wanted to quit during that, oh my gosh, it was more than I could count on two hands. But I always say, and I say this to our crew all the time, a lot of times when you kind of come up to that barrier, for us it's the edge, when you come up to that edge, right? And you come up to where you've been to where you want to go. Many people, when they get to that edge, they're going to retreat because there's just so much unknown and so much like, oh, I don't know if I could do it on the other side. But those 5 to 10%, which is who I'm talking to in this podcast, those 5 to 10% of people that say, okay, they're coming up to that edge. And is it scary? Yes. Is there unknown? Yes. But do they know that they just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep persisting to the other side? Yes. Right? And those that get over the edge, that get to that other side, oh my gosh, there is limitless potential that they unlock within themselves. And that's what gave me the confidence, along with my faith, to start a business. I don't think if I did not pursue that crazy, wildly uncomfortable goal that I actually ended up obtaining, I don't think I would have had the belief in myself to start a business. It first started me being like, well, if I can do it, anybody can. And then I wanted to show the way of that, of like, this is how you actually pursue, your fitness goals. This is how you actually do it in a healthy way. And so that process, like I said, was anything but uncomfortable. I had to do things differently. I had to say no to people when I normally said yes. And if I would have stayed in my comfort zone, if I would have stayed into well, Kels, that's not you. So like, no, that's for them, not you. If I would have stayed in my comfort zone to say, ooh, like I can't do that. No, Kelsey, yeah, they can do it, but I can't do it. If I were to stay in my comfort zone and say, you know what? Nope. Like maybe I'll do it later. Oh, that's one that many people like to use. Well, I'll just do it later. There's going to be a better time. You and I both know there's not going to be a better time, right? If I would have stayed in that comfort zone and never took the step to see if I could do it, I would not be here right now. I definitely would not have the business that I've built or the events that we throw. And I definitely would not be leading the amazing group of women in our community in the way that I am today, right? And it doesn't mean that just put me on a mountaintop moment. I've continually had to seek new edges. I've had to seek new capability within myself, right? And when I sought the edge, when I took the step to seek the edge of my comfort zone, I unleashed the potential that I didn't even know was within me. When I took the step to seek the edge of my comfort zone, I unleashed potential that I did not even know was within me. And there's a guy named Dr. Marcus Elliott. There's a book. This book gave words to everything that I've experienced that I just couldn't communicate. Like everything of like getting outside that comfort zone, everything of like why I have this internal drive to continue to pursue. It was like, oh, like, okay, like that makes sense. But in this book, The Comfort Crisis, there's a guy named Dr. Marcus Elliott. He's a Harvard trained physician. He owns a sports science facility called P3 that uses a lot of biometric data to improve athletic pro performance. A lot of the big time players go to him. And many people go to him for his performance. They go to him to get like that 1% better, right? However, what he's also known for, which is what's pulled in The Comfort Crisis, is he's known for a type of physical challenge. He hasn't coined this, but he's made it more well known. It's actually a Japanese adage here, is called the misogi. And what the misogi is you do something really physically hard to push past your limits to see what your true potential is. It's this like 1 time a year event. You might have heard some other people do it. Is you do something so physically wildly, I don't even know if I can actually complete it, outside of my comfort zone hard, to really tap into see what your true potential is. And for those out there that's like, Kels, like, why would you do that? Right? Like, why would you even put yourself in that scenario? That is exactly what this. And it does not need to be a 100-miler. For you, that might be a 5K. For you, that might be one of our lifting meets, all women's lifting meets. But you put something on the calendar that you need to step into that next level for you to actually be able to obtain. Like for me, I cannot keep doing the same stuff that I was and pretend like I'm going to go and be able to run 100 miles. I have to change my identity about myself. I have to not even think about 100 miles. I have to think about my training day today, right? And so what this misogi does is it's really, it talks about like purifying your mind, purifying your soul to really see what the possibility is and potential is within you. And this task has to stretch your limits. It has to be something that you have the possibility of failing in. And he says this in The Comfort Crisis, and I'm going to quote this word for it because I think this is so great. Is he said, let's say your potential is this big circle, right? And he pulls out his like arms in this big circle. And he goes, well, most of us live in the small space, and he puts his little fist up. So he's this massive circle, and then he puts his little fist up. Most of us live in this small space right here. We have no idea what exists at the edge of our potential. And by not having an idea of what it's like out on the edge, man, we really miss on something vital. So we live in this small little place right here without even realizing that this massive circle, this massive life outside of that even exists. And that is the true ethos of seeking the edge. That is the true ethos of seeking the edge of your comfort zone, seeking the edge of your capability. Because if I can light a fire in you too, hey, what is on the other side of my edge? Like let me tiptoe into setting, instead of shying away from discomfort, shying away from that hard conversation, shying away from starting that business, shying away from signing up for that event. Like, let me dive in. Like, let me pursue, let me run towards it. Because what's going to happen is as you run towards, not only are you going to step into another level version of yourself, you're going to realize, wow, I was settling. I was hardcore settling for who I thought I was and what I thought that I was not capable of. I was settling for so many self-imposed limitations that I didn't even realize. And this can be in your relationships. This can be in your fitness. This can be in your personal life, in your business. They all go together here. And so that is the true ethos of seeking the edge. And while most people live in this comfort zone, we're going to talk about that in the next podcast. When most people live in that little comfort zone, be the person to seek the edge. Be the person to say, okay, you know what? Y'all can stay here. Y'all can stay there. I'm going to go seek my edge. And guess what? I'm going to bring you guys with me to show you what you're capable of. And that is truly what I try to live out every single day. I pursue these challenges not only just for myself, even though a part of it is, but I also pursue these challenges to be like, well, if Kels can do it, like maybe I can too, right? And that's the goal there. And so then you might ask, like, why is this important? Okay, Kels, I get, seeking the edge. I get, stepping out of my comfort zone. I get it. But why is it important? And it's not just important to live your life. It's not just important for that. It's important for 3 main reasons in my opinion. The first reason that this is important, and I believe this so deeply in my soul, is that you were made for purpose on purpose. My faith, my everything says that you were made for purpose on purpose. You were not an accident. You are not just put here randomly in this day, the time that's listening to this podcast. It wasn't just an accident that you're here. And for you to truly live out your purpose, it means stepping into all that you can be. For you to truly live out your purpose here, it means you becoming all that you can be here on this earth. Not just the six-pack in a gym, but you growing in who you are mentally and emotionally and spiritually. You were made for purpose on purpose. Right here, that's number one. And to actually live that out, we need to pursue more that's within us. That, in my opinion, God has given you, right? Number two is to truly live instead of just being alive. There's a quote basically of saying that a lot of people here, they don't just die when they're actually dead. They're living, but they're actually already dead. And that makes me so sad. And there's also another one that says the graveyard is where all the dreams and aspirations are. Like all of these amazing dreams and aspirations that never came to fruition, probably because of doubt and fear. That the graveyard is like a multi-million-dollar place, right? And that you are meant to truly live. You are meant to have the fulfillment, the joy, the highs, the lows, like truly live instead of just being alive. And with nowadays, with us being all on our phones and us honestly just living life through other people, I think it is now more than ever important for us to get in community. You're going to see we're all about community here. Get in community, but then also show yourself, hey, you know what? I'm going to sign up for that event. I'm going to do that crazy thing. I'm going to actually go pursue something that maybe I wouldn't have done before because I'm meant to actually live. I'm not just meant to be alive. And those are two different things. And then lastly, third but not least here is you get to have such a big impact on others and show them what's possible. I always say somebody has to go first. A lot of times it's me. Somebody has to go first to show other people what's possible. People did that for me. Oh my gosh, that when I talk about listening to podcasts, I started a business. I pursued bodybuilding because I saw other people that's like, well, wait, they came from a similar background. Wait, they weren't born with any special things. Well, if they can do it, that means I might be able to, right? You talk about going first all the time. Somebody has to go first to show other people that it's possible. And in my opinion, it's like you might as well be the change that you want to see. It's up to you to take accountability to be that person, not wait and hope and dream for the other person to start it before you. Okay. So this podcast is not just going to be a pump up every single week. It's not just going to be like, oh, rah, rah, get you excited. My goal is to give you the tips and tools in your mindset, in your nutrition, in your training to help you tap into that 3.0 version, to help you actually seek the edge of your potential right here to step into who you're meant to be. Okay. Also, and this is later, we're going to have some people on here. I love interviewing. I love getting to know people. If you know me, you know I will ask you a bajillion questions. But to get people on here for them to be the first for you. Maybe they've stepped into an arena that you're like, man, like I kind of want to, right? They can show you the way. They can show you that it ain't just all rainbows and sunshine, right? But that it's truly meant that if they can do it, you can do it too. Okay. So whether you want to level up your fitness journey or start that crazy dream inside that's deep inside your soul, this podcast is for you. Okay, I promise you I'm going to keep it real, raw, everything that I'm going through. The highs, the lows, the everything in between. Kelsey here. So the podcast at the end got cut off on the video portion, which I'm so bummed about. So if you want to listen to the end, I think there's about 4 to 5 more minutes. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and you will get the rest of that podcast there. It drove me crazy, but you got to do what you got to do. So thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoyed.